Welcome to When Women Preach. This podcast exists to empower AAPI and Latina women faith leaders. This podcast was created and is hosted by Isaac, the innovative space for Asian American Christianity, where our mission is to soar beyond seminary. My name is Cris Otonari. We are also here with our co-founder of Isaac, as well as the founder of this podcast, Young Lee Hertig. Our guest for this episode is Phyllis Kim Myung, recently appointed as a new lead pastor of New City Church of Los Angeles. Congratulations.
Thank
Yeah, we are
you.
so excited for you. Really looking forward to learning from you, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. I've learned and know about Isaac for a long time, and I know so many amazing women who have really benefited from Isaac, and I'm so thankful for this space. So thank you for having me
Thank
And let
you.
me
Thank you.
insert, Phyllis was my greatest birthday gift,
here.
as her installation date was my birthday, and I told my husband, there's nowhere else I want to go today. So she was a greatest birthday gift, and then we went to Hyundai dealer, and now we have EV.
Yes.
Ionic 5, so we can drive anywhere.
Yeah, that's
Yep,
great.
and she does. She drives all over.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we could start by you telling us a little bit about your transition into your new role. Like, how did you prepare for that spiritually, emotionally, practically?
Yeah, well, I had a long lead time for it because it was last January, not this past, but the January before that I started the whole process. And I wasn't really looking for a job, was look on the lookout for what was next that God wanted me to do. And a friend of mine suggested that I just apply for this position because he felt like it really resonated. The church really resonated with the values that I have. And he was just like, it wouldn't hurt. Just give it a try. So I did. I sent in my application at the end of December and had my first phone interview with them in January. And I think that was kind of, kicked off the process of discerning if this was the next thing. Um, I came into ministry a little bit later, or not the usual course, I guess, of what I had envisioned it would be, where you go get your undergraduate degree and then you go to seminary and then you start working at a church. I had a much more roundabout way where I had all these years of working kind of in the corporate world and in the education field. Um, and then came into ministry later because I actually didn't have any examples of female leadership in churches.
Wow, in
So
Boston?
well, growing up in Seattle, I grew up in an immigrant church, it was a Presbyterian church, and I just didn't see any women who were pastors or anything like that. But I felt a call from God when I was little. So I think it wasn't until I had moved to Boston finally, and I was in my early 20s that I first saw a woman leading in any way in church. And then I heard a woman preach for the first time. So I just didn't know that that was a possibility for me, even though I felt this call on my life. And so I was part of this church plant, and the children's ministry director was leaving and they weren't going to hire anyone. And I was enraged because I just really love working with children. And I had my own child in the ministry. And I just said, you know what, interview me. I would love to have that position. And that's how I kind of stumbled into ministry, vocational ministry. Yeah. So, so this was not on my radar. To be a lead pastor of anything anywhere was never on my radar. It was probably the last thing that I wanted to do. But as I continued in this process, I was getting a lot of affirmation from other people, but I also felt like from God. And it probably wasn't until I came to visit in person and have some in-person interviews along with my family where I just felt like, oh, this could be that next step. this could be that transition. And, I have a teenager right now, and my husband works from home, but, they were not keen necessarily on uprooting this life that we had built in Boston for the past 25 years and moving across the country. So one big thing for me in this whole transition was, if I just told New City, if my family's not on board, then I can't go. And I think that there was a point where my husband came and just said to me, I feel that this is a call from God and we should go and we need to live our life with purpose. And we're going to do that. That place is going to be in LA, at New City Church.
Wow.
Yeah. Wonderful. And so that was huge for me. And was just yet another affirmation. And, we just kept going, and I wasn't sure. I know that there was another candidate that was in play, and I was like, surely they're not going to choose me. I have no experience as a lead pastor. I was very, open and honest about that. And they called and said, you're going to be our candidate. And I was utterly shocked, to the point where the person who called me was like, do you still want this job? You don't seem that excited. I was like, yeah, I do.
Okay.
I just was like, I'm just surprised. I wasn't expecting that kind of phone call. And then I came back out at the end of September, and was out here for 2 Sundays and preached, did some candidating stuff. And then they voted for me, and then voted me in as their new lead pastor. And then, just kind of joined from Zoom and, all of that with meetings and stuff before I officially came. And then I came out here. I was scheduled to come out here in January, right when the fires started.
Welcoming you.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to fly out here because it was hard when you're across the country, it's hard to tell by the news what's actually happening in California.
Yeah.
And the realization for me of that LA is actually so large that I couldn't even comprehend that you could have fires in 2 different areas that were not technically that far from each other, but there would be pockets of Los Angeles where it didn't even seem like there was a fire happening. So I flew out, LAX was fine, and I was here, and that Sunday I had to preach and I had to pivot my sermon and everything to kind of meet the needs of what was happening. And we grieved together, we lamented together, we cried together, and then, together as a church, we just prayed for the firefighters, people who've been affected, and and just for city leadership and all of that. And that was my first kind of jump into, ministry in LA is going to be really different. And ministering at this church is going to be really different. So that's how I transitioned. I say I transitioned by fire.
Yeah, literally.
Literal fire.
Yeah.
Not only that, your church meets literally at a theater, and my memory serves me well, it was like a rock concert. I mean, the
Was it?
congregation while she was preaching, there was just like cheering on, and it was like a rock concert.
Yeah, they're a vocal bunch, which
I
is
loved
another
it.
thing that I really had to get used to.
Because you came from a smaller church environment, right?
Well, it was like a medium-sized church, but it was a church that was in the suburbs of Boston, and it was predominantly white. And it was just really different, you know? It was very homogeneous and kind of who came, and socioeconomic class is very similar. And I don't think people really would shout something in the middle of anyone's sermon. There. It's just not what we did. Plus, it's New England, and in New England, you don't do stuff like that, right? So,
You fit right in, Phyllis. I think Cris may resonate with what you just said. Cris also serves in predominantly white congregation, right?
Yes. Yeah. But I just previously came from a campus that was predominantly Asian and Asian American. So,
Mhm.
yeah, just trying to figure out how to navigate that space. It is a little
Yeah.
different.
It is. It's different and it's tricky. And there's a lot of, I mean, we could have another whole podcast just on that.
For sure. Yes.
But yeah.
Outsourcing of Asian American superb faith leaders.
Yeah. I did take a look at your church's website and I love so many things about your church. I don't know how long, I didn't look at the history and how long they've been around, but I know coming in as a new leader, like there are certain traditions and things that people hold on to, dearly. And so, how do you discern what things to keep going as they were, carry forward, or what things might need to be
Hmm.
reshaped? And were there any particular values or traditions, practices of New City that from their past leadership that you felt you needed to really preserve?
Yeah, so the church has been around for 17 years, and that's a long time, a long history. I'm doing and am continuing to do a lot of listening.
Hmm.
I think that for me, from all my interviews with the nominating committee as well as with the elders and with the staff, is I'm here to listen and to really learn and help
Hmm.
discern together with the rest of the church uh, where God is already working, what God is doing, what God wants to do. Um, I think that the church has one of the gems of the church, and one of the things that I hope to continue on is I feel like the vision that the founder had was to do life together with everybody from all walks of life. And he definitely had a heart for the homeless. And so, which is why he chose this location. And, it was inspired from that. And, but he wasn't wanting to just do ministry to the homeless, right? Or handing things out or serving food or that kind of stuff. He wanted to do the ministry with the homeless and to create a space where they could feel that they could come to a church, be themselves, and be welcome and be a part of this community.
Hmm.
So that's definitely one of the things that I just want to keep. I think that's really unique of a church. And I think that's the model that Jesus envisioned, that we're just doing life together. We're walking in our life journey together with people, whether they are homeless or they live in, I don't know, some Beverly Hills mansion. It does, like, from all walks of life, right? All
Hmm.
ages, all colors, um, all identities, and that we're all walking together and we're united because of Christ. So that's a major thing that I'm like, okay, how do I keep that and hold that, and make sure that we kind of continue to usher that in going into the future. I think some of the other things are just, the church has gone through a lot. They were still coming out of, the church has changed a lot after COVID.
Yeah.
So there's things there that I'm like, okay, a lot of churches, what they did is they just kind of went back to what they were doing before COVID. And so there's a question that I'm asking is, well, what are the things that you guys used to do that you're still doing now, even
Hmm.
post COVID? And does it still make sense? Because
Hmm.
the church has changed. There's been a lot of transition in the church. And so I've been doing my best to listen, but also ask the question, why? Why are we doing this?
Hmm.
What was the purpose for this? To kind of help in that discernment. And then also learning that, you got to change things a little bit at a time. If you change everything all at once, it's going to kind of send
Yeah.
people into shock.
Hmm.
So we've just been experimenting here and there with little things, to try to I guess, kind of steer the ship in different directions and to kind of see what's working and what's not. And I think the elders as well as the staff are pretty on board with trying different things. And, you
Oh,
know,
great.
they're pretty flexible. But the church is also, the church is oddly just really up for anything. And that's just been a huge blessing. Yeah.
It sounds like maybe that was a value that was instilled by leadership that
Yeah.
preceded you, maybe
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
just gritty people kind of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're so wise. I want to underscore listening. I think you will get a lot of ideas what to do and what not to do from listening to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I feel like it just shows humility, and a posture of te like your teachability.
Yeah.
And you don't want to go in there like guns blazing
Yeah.
because you're right. That doesn't ever work well.
No,
Right.
it never
No.
does.
Have you found things that maybe as you are listening or just getting feedback from some of the people who've been around for a while, are you finding that there are any things that you're like, yeah, I think really we need to kind of reimagine that? And how do you navigate that space? Because it is very sensitive.
It is. It's super, super sensitive. I think so, I got installed at the beginning of March and then it was Lent. And so the first series that I wanted to do was on lamentation. And I had been reading, I have a habit of reading Prophetic Lament by Pastor Sungchan Ra. Yeah, every year. I just like to be reminded because it's something we don't do enough of. So I really felt like God saying this church needs to lament and you need to mourn and grieve together. And mourn and grieve the loss of the lead pastor, the founding pastor who had been there for so long. Grieve the changes and the staff transitions that have happened in the past, 10 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
Grieve what's happening in LA. Grieve the fires, the wildfires. Grieve, like what's happening with the current administration. Um, so just to grieve all those things. So lament is has been the way that I've been trying to navigate that. Because I think there's a lot of things that we have been doing as a church that when I ask the question why, people don't really have an
Mm-hmm.
answer for why. Or they're just like, I don't know why we are doing that. It's just what we do. And so to help people move away from that, I think giving space to name it, to lament it, to grieve it, and to have the sensitivity of being like, this served us for a time, but it's not serving us any longer.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we honor that and then move on to something else?
I think
Um,
you're raising an important question because
yeah,
leadership is culture making as well.
Mm.
So when people say, I don't know why we do it, that means that's embedded in their culture.
right.
You just take it for granted. So I think you coming in from outside, asking why questions, that's so pivotal and important, I think.
Yeah. And I think just doing it in a genuine, like I
Mm-hmm.
sincerely, I'm not asking because I'm trying to change everything, but it's just genuine, sincere desire to be like, what is God doing with New City right now? And what has God been doing? And so then as we look toward the future, where is that direction? What is that
Yeah.
path that God
Mm-hmm.
has leading
Mm-hmm.
for us? And trying to be sensitive to that. And I just feel like once we're able to name that all together and to do it together as a community rather than just individuals coming in and just changing policies for the sake of changing
Yeah.
policies because of new leadership, is not really sensitive and honoring. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, do you guys know Marie Kondo? She does like the organize, right? And she says to thank the item that you're no
Right.
longer going to use. And I was like, we should do that with people and policies at church. Thank and recognize and name and honor it and say, okay, this served us so well for a time, but now it's somebody else can maybe use that or somebody else can benefit from that. But now it's time for us to go in this direction. And I think it's that same idea. It's literally like we're gonna just, you know, Marie Kondo stuff at church.
What I hear in the last thing you said is kind of the inherent value of especially people, but even policies or programs or things that we just do in ministry, and then we lose sight of why we do that. But it had inherent value. And so, to express gratitude and I'm sure you, when you grieve with people, like it's it's so much about the relationship, and it sounds like you're already building trust with people. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think that's just wonderful.
yeah. Trying to. That's probably the hardest piece of it is to try to build that trust.
Mm-hmm. One word that pops into my head as I was listening to you is alignment or realignment with what has been going on in the new city and what new things we need to do. And in light of what's going on in the world today, immediate community and community at large and all of that. So my prayer for you will be, okay, she's trying to realign, and may that process be fruitful and productive.
Amen. And thank you.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of wrap up our time. If you have some great words of advice for other leaders who are stepping into maybe new roles where they're inheriting a ministry, but maybe feeling a little bit of a pulling to lead in a new direction, what advice would you have for those leaders?
Yeah, I think my advice would be to surround yourself with a support system. And consider having maybe like an outside board that's just for yourself. That's gonna be your cheerleader. It's gonna be praying for the ministry that you're a part of. That has a really outside look and they're not entrenched in what you're doing, and with the church necessarily or the ministry or whatever it might be. And so that they can kind of give you permission to be bold, but also to be able to say to you really honestly, hey, I actually think that that's going to be more damaging than helpful. Have you considered or tried X, Y, and Z instead? Um, and I think the other thing is you just to listen a lot, listen more than talk and direct.
Mm-hmm.
I
That's
think you
wisdom.
gain, I think you gain a lot from that. So.
So, Phyllis, it sounds like you've been spared from many pastors in our program shares oppression and lack of opportunities and not having enough voice. It seems like you haven't had that. If I
Oh no, I've
am,
had a lot of that.
oh, you,
I've had a ton of it, which is
and
why I think I'm approaching and coming into this differently because I was like, I don't want to continue that cycle.
mm-hmm,
I don't I don't want to keep perpetuating that. So what does that mean for me then as a leader? How do I act differently? How do I come in with a different posture? And I think I was talking to somebody else and we were talking about how women naturally are just collaborators. And we want to kind of share the wealth and it's hard to get away from the scarcity mindset, especially as women and women of color,
yeah,
because it feels like there's few opportunities, but there is so much work that is out there and there is an abundance. And so if we can come in with that mindset and trusting God in that abundance that God has given, that we can step into that confidently and boldly, without being hesitant, reticent, and afraid that there's not going to be enough out there for us.
That is such an important concept, and I try to practice that every day. And you're right, many women are oppressed. Therefore, there's this trauma with a scarcity mentality. So we are gearing up for Give in May campaign, and this podcast is not free, but we benefit many listeners. So if people can just hit the button on YouTube, subscribe, then we could maybe reach 1,000 subscriber. That could give us some kickback. And we're deeply grateful for Lily Endowment, who made this podcast possible. So now we are praying how we sustain for a long time for next generation. So keep us in your prayers, and I appreciate you taking your busy time and showing up and sharing your wisdom and your experience.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phyllis. It was a
Thank you.
pleasure.
Yeah, it was my pleasure.